front on.
Just go like this.
One. Right, folks, we've just relocated and we've found ourselves a lovely pair of Nyala. And folks, we've just relocated and we found ourselves this lovely pair of Nyala here. Oh, and there's actually another one behind there. Now, this male is following this female. Ooh, and there's actually lots of them there in the brush. I didn't even notice that lying down. They're all ruminating there in the background. But this male is quite interested in this female, I think because she might be coming into season. He's been following her and really sniffing the air and flexing his Jacobson's organ at the back of his throat, doing what they call the phlegm grimace, which does help to use the organ to test how ready she is for mating, and that interprets the smell and deciphers it and sends the message to the brain through that organ. Now, this is a good indication here of the difference in size between the male and female, and also very, very clear sexual dimorphism. That means a very big difference between the male and female, and this is why we also say that with the Nyala they are particularly interesting because of the difference between them, and they're the sort of cut-off point, the male being a bull and the female being a ewe. Not as in ewe, as in yuck, as in E-W-E. So that would normally be a ram and an ewe, and a bull and a cow. You see there, he's going, when she's urinating, he can often actually stick his nose right in the urine, and that for him then tests her readiness for mating. So he's quite interested in her, and there's a red-billed oxpecker on his back, and he's very interested. He keeps following her. So, and there's also some other females there lying on the ground. As I've said before, for any new viewers or visitors, they do need to lie down to ruminate, to do it properly, you know, to digest fully. They are ruminants. They chew the cud and they regurgitate and re-swallow numerous times. So very fine looking Bambi type coloration of the females, making them almost look like deer, with no horns, and the males having horns. Quite indicative of your real bush antelope, as opposed to the plains antelope like springbok, for instance, where both male and female have horns, more so for protection out on the plains. The bush antelope, it's mostly just for dominance between males, because their bigger predator avoidance or tactic, predation avoidance, would be sort of running through the thick bush and actually avoiding the predators, as opposed to defending themselves out on the plains. So it's quite easy to see between the bush antelope and the plains antelope whether male and female both have horns or not. Those lovely stripes down the side of the body, also making them be able to, that is a form of camouflage, but helping to break up the outline of the body. So when a predator looks through the thick brush, you can't make out which is head or back end. So it does help to assist in making them blend into the bush. ever present, listening out. Even when they are seemingly relaxed, they can never relax when there's predators around. Lions, leopard, they're constantly on the listen. See that lovely white under the tail? Alright, so you see how they're carrying on to feed through the brush. And while we watch these Nyala moving through the brush, maybe Noel has got some indication of their tracks for you.
There are some tracks around, Ralph. But what I have found is one of my favorite smells in the bush. So, if you're with me, you would smell sort of not minty, but very, very fresh and sweet. This is wild basil. And so the leaves can be used for cooking. And then for me in particular, I just enjoy the smell. And also if you've been around, say, lions eating on a buffalo kill and it's very, very stinky, it's nice to pass it around and have everybody smell that as opposed to dead buffalo. Now with the cooking, I haven't tried cooking as much as I would like with these leaves, but I do know a couple of friends of mine that have cooked and it has come out quite well. But yeah, very sweet. Not the big basil leaves, not that smell, but those very small sweet basil leaves that you would cook with. I'm trying to think of another way to put how this smell would be, but it is its own unique smell. James, our friend is back, our juvenile, what did we decide it was, a steppe eagle, but I don't know if we'll be able to get him.
Where is he?
Or no, sorry, is that a yellow-billed kite? No, but there's no forked tail. Do you see him here? It's a very square end to the tail. Sorry, earlier we found an eagle and we were all debating about who it is. And I'm pretty sure this is him again. We get to steppe eagles that come from the steppes of Russia and the steppes of Mongolia. In our summertime, they migrate down here. And this juvenile popped up. So he's got a triangle tail, but he doesn't have a fork to it. So it's similar to a yellow-billed kite, but it's very, very flat. And then I'm very bad with sort of up in the air guessing size, but I don't know, maybe just over a foot when we saw him sitting. Yeah, James is doing amazing camera work today. Oh, well. Shame. So my guess is that he's flying around looking for something to eat, smaller birds, maybe a lizard, maybe a mouse. And then because the sun's just starting to come up, those thermals are rising off the air. Sorry for looking into the sun there. Yes, he's really being quite nice to us. There we go. It's a very sort of drab, gray, brown color. And then one of the reasons why we... Ooh. Yes! There must be some little fish or something in there that he's after. I'm just amazed at how he's really just ignoring us and really not concerned with us being here as he's looking around. So James was the one that ultimately called juvenile steppe eagle. Here he goes, here he goes. Yes. Sorry? Is it a kite? Oh, it is our yellow-billed kite. Why is the tail not as forked? Juvenile kite. So James is now saying that it's a kite. We've got a bit of a better view now. Interesting. And then there he sits. Let's get it exactly. Being mobbed. I feel like that gape, James, is similar to what we were discussing earlier. And I'm not really seeing a fork, although I would be interested to hear what you have to say. So everyone, one of the reasons why we're discussing this raptor the way that we're discussing it is, for me personally, raptors, especially in the air, can be some of the hardest birds to identify. But then also when you start talking about possible juveniles, possible teenage raptors, their plumage colors are not always that of the adult, and so it can be a little bit more difficult. So what I'm seeing is a full-on yellow beak with a gape that's going past the eye, quite a thick one going past the eye. I feel like, James, it's the one we were discussing earlier. But for me, look, if your gut instinct was yellow-billed kite, I say we could stay with yellow-billed kite.
I'm not convinced.
I'm also not convinced but it's strictly because of the tail that I'm not convinced. So maybe there's someone at home who has a better visual than we do, or possibly a better idea. We're going to try and sneak up onto it, and so I'm going to talk a little bit quieter. I do have a loud voice. I do forget that you can whisper. So we're going to see what we can do. See if we can get up just a little bit closer, just to get a bit of a better ID. Another reason why I'm thinking juvenile is just its display and its how comfortable it is with us around. Juveniles are not always the best at perching. Oh, now he's off again. Yeah. You can see just there that fork a little bit better. James, do we ever get black kites here? Oh, it's missing some tail feathers. All right. So Jamie is bumbling around in the Mara. So we're going to go with yellow-billed kite for that one, with that last flyby. I'm going to defer to James on that. And we are going to head on up to Jamie and see what she has to show us on her bumble around the Masai Mara.
Nothing at the moment, but well, bravo to James for being on bushwalk camera this morning. I'm sure he's doing a marvelous job. What is everybody looking at? Let me just check something quickly, just in case I'm about to drive past a lion or something along those lines. Everybody's looking in that direction. What are you looking at? Hold on a minute. Let's go see. We're still on our way to where the cheetah was last seen. Let's just go find out what these guys are looking at. I need to go and apologize to that driver as well, because he was the guy that I nearly drove into with the rain covers on last night. So I owe him a sincere apology. In fact, if he races away, it might be because he's scared I'm going to drive into him. Oh, come on. Oof, long wheelbase. Clunk. What have you seen? Still don't see what they've seen. They're all looking down into this lug over here, or at least the drainage next to the road. Oh, it's a lion. Ha! I see him. I see him. I nearly did drive past a lion. Hello, mister. One of the young males that spends a bit of time around this area. Okay, so here's some interesting information I have just gathered from one of the rangers who stopped to check that we had all of our permits in order. And he tells me that the Cheli male, the one that had the collar on, has removed his own collar, apparently. So it does sometimes happen that the animal Let me try and explain this from the beginning for our new viewers. One of the young lions here was fitted with a tracking collar, and it's very important, and often it is the young males that get fitted with tracking collars because they are the ones that are most likely to disperse into human areas, and they are one of the more likely ones to be involved in human-wildlife conflict with the neighboring communities. So understanding their dispersal methods, understanding where they go, is an important way of understanding exactly what it is or how it is that we can mitigate the effects of that dispersal in whatever means, by whatever means necessary. So one of them was fitted with a tracking collar. Typically the collars look like they are very tight on the animal. They're not too tight, but it is to stop them from pulling them off. Every now and again though, they do actually manage to get them off themselves. I don't think it's this guy. His mane looks a little bit small, but this might be the coalition partner of that male that had the tracking collar. Remember the one that we saw mating with a female? And the fact that they spent a lot of time very, very close to Scar's territory? I suspect this is the other one. I think. I don't know. Perhaps there is another lion somewhere here. Could easily be hiding in the long grass. But I'm not 100% sure. There's about 4 young males that wander about, and I still haven't had a chance to really get to know them. So this is a great opportunity when he lifts his head, if he lifts his head, to get screenshots of his whisker spots, because that's the way that we can figure out exactly which male this is. Still blonde, still young, mane not yet fully developed. Very, very pink nose as well. And when you're aging lions, one of the things that you can look at, of course, is mane development. Oh, there we go. Well done, Archie. Well spotted. You see, these two look too small to me. Even that one over there doesn't look like the one that was wearing the collar. Not too small, too young. I'm not sure we're not dealing with 2 different groups of young males. Okay, so we're going to try and figure out the mystery of the young male lions. I'm not sure, but I think that there's 2 groups, and that's causing confusion. But apparently Ralph has found what Kirsty tells us is a donkey.
Yes, we're talking about donkeys, folks. That lovely water donkey that we call the Waterbuck. We found some a little bit down the road from the airstrip at Chitwa. These are one of my favorite animals. Although we don't have the best of views, you can still see that white toilet seat ring on the bum. Sorry once again for that pole that we've got with the roof here. We're just making sure that we don't get too wet again today, but it seems like the rain has started to lift, and all these Waterbuck are going through the motions of ruminating, and very easy. When I'm out in the field and I do a bushwalk, I will show you their dung, which literally comes out like corn on the cob. It's very similar to that of wildebeest. So the ones that you will mistake, or that are very close together, that you can mistake or make a mistake with, is between wildebeest, blue wildebeest, and Waterbuck. But Waterbuck it comes like in a tube, but really honestly looks like corn on the cob. And that white ring on their bum that we did see a minute ago, that's one of those follow me signs similar to that of the impala with their black stripes. And there's some impala here as well. There's another Waterbuck there. So they're feeding through the brush here. They are grazing. And the impala moving with them, they're more of a mixed feeder. The impala will feed on more leaves and grass, and that's actually one of the other reasons why impala are so adaptable and so successful, is because they are able to feed on a very wide range of vegetation, whereas the waterbuck a little bit more specific. Now, the waterbuck also, you won't find waterbuck far from water, as the name would suggest. There's a younger female who's having a little bit of a scratch. The females having with no horns, and the males have got very large curling horns. They don't turn too much. They just a very slight curl to them, almost like a gemsbok or the oryx, but not dead straight like that. They've got a curl to them. So the males are quite fascinating and very beautiful with the big horns like that. You won't find them far from water. That's also why they've got such a shaggy coat. They do like to spend heavily a large amount in the water, especially if there is grazable vegetation within the water. They like to be near the water. You won't find them further than 10 kilometers from water at a maximum, an absolute maximum. They will move for grazing, but they'll return to water. So they're heavily water dependent. And it's quite a serene atmosphere here at the moment. After having it been raining, these guys have probably fed this morning, and now they're spending the time. So what they would do is, as ruminants, they will walk around and they actually feed a lot for quite an extended period of time, and then they've actually built up that volume of vegetation within the stomachs. Then they need to go and sit and lie and ruminate, as do your cows. So your cows are a very good indication, very similar to what these impala and the waterbuck would be doing. They need to go and lie down and actually do the physical process of digestion. So people often think, oh, they're lying down, they're having a rest. It's not that per se. They do need to spend this time ruminating, and that's one of the sort of cons of being a ruminant versus a hindgut fermenter. The ruminants having a much better digestive system, being able to digest a whole lot more of the value of the vegetation that they are feeding on, but they do need to spend this time lying down and ruminating, whereas the hindgut fermenters, they can just stay on the move all the time, but they literally do need to continue on the move feeding, because it's such a low digestion rate with the hindgut fermenters that they need to keep passing that vegetation through in order for them to obtain enough energy from it. It's nice to see all the dung beetles starting to come out. We've passed quite a few now. You know, they are summer active, especially after the rains like this. We start to see a whole host of more dung beetles exiting and coming to take the dung. Right, so we're going to continue on the road a bit shortly. I'm hearing some dark chanting goshawks, and from our flat waterbuck on the ground here, I think Jamie has got something else very flat for you.
Absolutely, and I'm betting that it's flatter than the waterbuck is. In fact, it is as flat as the pancakes I'm really hoping we're having for breakfast this morning. Rebecca, have I missed pancake morning again while I was on the other side of the river? Or do you think that there's pancakes for this morning's breakfast? It would be so nice. Oh, Rebecca says they can make sure that there's pancakes for breakfast. Just to let you know, Brent, who was helping us out this morning on his rest morning, has returned back up the hill, possibly back to bed. It's uncertain at this stage, but he has returned back to camp now that we have managed to make everything work, sort of. Things are back to almost normal. So that's where he's disappeared off to, just in case you were all wondering. I have to say, this is probably the most enthralling sighting of a lion we have ever had. What do you think, Archie? Lots to work with there, huh? Oh, Chelsea, define cats and define area. Chelsea wants to know how many cats there are in the area. Ooh, area? It depends on what you're talking about. So within this specific area, we've got the Salt Lick Pride just over there. Also, not to be confused with the Sausage Tree Pride number 2. So between those two prides, you're probably looking at around about 10, 15 lions, plus these two is 17, plus the 4 musketeers over there. That's around about 21, plus the other 2 male lions, 23, plus the Magoro Pride, 26, 30, plus the Paradise Pride. It's a difficult thing for me to tell you exactly. That's just the lions. There are plenty of leopards around here. I would say in the area that I've just described, there's probably at least 10 or so leopards within that area. Then there's servals. Then there's the female cheetah with the 2 cubs that we know is somewhere in this region. It's difficult to define. Servals, caracals, we don't see enough of them to really get an idea of the exact numbers. So we don't know exactly. But within our Traverse area, you're looking at well over 100 lions. More. Possibly even closer to 200 lions. And I'm talking about being in the Triangle, the Mara Triangle, and in the Mara National Reserve, which is on the other side of the river. So there you're looking at about 160,000 hectares of Traverse. It takes us a few hours to move from one side to the other. More than a few, depending on where we're going. And it stretches all the way to the Tanzanian border. And in that space, there will be over 200 lions. There'll be at least 40 cheetah, I would say. Do you think that's an exaggeration? No, I think that's fair. There'd be at least the same number of leopards as there are lions, I would say, within that group. Maybe a bit less. So 150 odd leopards within that area. Plus the 40 cheetah. Plus however many servals and caracals. There's a lot of cats. There are a lot of cats to be found here. And within Djuma, of course, the Traverse area is somewhat tinier. And then you're looking at 2 lion prides that are regularly seen, 1 male lion coalition, but with other lions seen at different times. And of course the various leopard characters that are seen, and the occasional cheetah. So there's lots of cats, lots and lots of cats to be found. Some of them are less easy to find when they look like that. Very easy to drive past a lion that is that prone. Should we go look for cheetah cubs? I really feel like we should try before the end of the safari. We're running out of time. I'm not sure we're going to get there before the end of the sunrise safari, but it's still worth a try, isn't it? Isn't it? Even if we do have to drive through a lot of mud. I mean, you know, then we might get stuck, and that would give Brent great joy. I'm almost at the point where I want to disengage his deflock, just to see what happens. Secretly. I wouldn't, but I might. Quickly, while we head across to the cheetah, or where the cheetah was, let's send you back across to Noelle. I wasn't listening to what Rebecca said because I was thinking about the marshmallow deal, but she said something about Noelle, and something that Noelle has. Maybe.
Alright, we have come across a small herd of Nyalas. Now, I know that Ralph was chatting earlier about colors of antelope and camouflage in the bush, and you can see just how well these Nyalas are camouflaging themselves with that sort of caramel tawny color and the stripes along their sides. Now, our wind has switched a bit, so they do know we're here. Also, humans are not as stealthy as, say, leopards or lions, but Nyalas are extremely aware of the fact that they are part of the prey system, that they are in fact edible. So they've got very, very, very large ears to hear with, to pick up any sort of rustling or odd sound that there might be. So if the camouflage doesn't work, then the ears will assist. And if that doesn't work, then what they will try and do, let's just maybe walk a little bit this way. We'll see if we can get another view. If neither the camouflage nor them hearing works, then what they will do is they will sort of leap away with a flash of a white tail to try and get away from the predator. So they know that I'm here. They're not quietly and walking quietly, because even though they are aware, I don't want to push them off. Sort of meander through, and as we just come around this little bit of a corner here, we're going to have a really nice view. There we go. All of the antelope species, that Nyala tend to be the most okay with us on foot. Impala by now would have run off. Zebra do a pretty good job. Wildebeest most likely would have run off. Nyala, for some reason, understand our body structure very well. I have a feeling it's because they tend to like to be around our camps often, or they're just very secure in themselves. So she's decided that where I'm standing is maybe a bit too much, and she's going to slowly move off back into a little bit of the thickets, but she's not running, and they're not alarm calling. Now she's feeding slowly, and the other females are taking a cue from her as well. Although it looks like there might be, nope, that's all females in there that I can see from now, from here, excuse me. Now you'll notice, I don't know if you could hear, you'll notice that when they walk, it's very quiet. So they're putting one foot and the next foot in exactly the same spot. It's to minimize the noise that they make in the bush, so that they're not drawing too much attention to themselves. It's called track-on-track walking. All right, well, we are going to let them be and let them move on. And we're going to carry on down this pathway here and just loop around them so that they can eat, quietly make their way down to water, have a drink, and then carry on feeding and carry on with their day. All right, Ralph is on the other side of Djuma, driving around, so let's go join him and see what he has to say.
All right, folks, we're just continuing on a little bit. We're trying to pick up on some tracks of some of those big cats, looking around, trying to find out if there's any movement from them. We haven't seen anything just yet. We've just come past where Hosanna had his kill up in the tree, and that impala has been stolen, apparently by Tamba. So that impala is gone. There's no fresh trail there. It's all been ridden over, rained on, so it's all fresh now and clean. So there's no leopard tracks in the area there at present, and a very good indication that they're not there now, because if they were moving around, we would definitely get the fresh, lovely fresh tracks. Very easy to see now, because it's all been cleaned up by the rain. So we just are trying to move around nice and slowly, trying to pick up on any signs of any big cats, and obviously stopping for anything along the way that might be interesting too. So, just seen a little African goshawk fly over, but it wasn't nice for us because he was on the move, not easy to be able to video that. But as we continue along here, I'm sure Noel has been showing you some lovely tracks, and how clean the rain then makes everything. Fresh tracks. It's very nice to be on foot when you've got that nice clean slate. So we're just slowly making our way around, looking for those little signs, and lo and behold, the sun is coming out. Wow! So it's time for us to dry out a little bit. I am going to Perry, what is my favorite animal? Question coming through there. I have mentioned it before, but I will say it again, and I'll keep saying it. The honey badger for me is by far the most incredible species, I think, in Africa, if not in the world, because of his sheer tenaciousness and never say die attitude. He's not scared of anything. Bird wise, very similar character to that of a honey badger, being that of the fork-tailed drongo. If I had to be reincarnated as a bird, definitely the fork-tailed drongo would be top of my list. It doesn't matter if you're a martial eagle, crowned eagle, vulture, goshawk. The fork-tailed drongo is definitely not scared of any of them, and he can also mimic most other birds too. So it's quite incredible. He's not just scared, not scared of anything. It's almost like he's got quite a high intelligence as well, and quite adaptable. You find them in most environments. They're not specific to one small area. I'm coming up the road a little bit here, and I do see a couple of 2-3 male Nyala, which is quite interesting because they don't generally. Now I'm just trying to position for Seb that we get that pole out the way for you. Let me just move in like that. Might work. Sorry, buddy. Didn't want to bump you off. But what can be quite interesting with the Nyala, when you see the males around each other like this, the males with the Nyala, they do quite a lovely standoff. It's very rare that you actually have male Nyala facing off and locking horns. What they do is they will stand side to side, and they will raise the hair, especially that white crest along the back. They'll raise that, and then they do a very slow dance. And I'm sure I've actually looked at some of the videos, and I've seen James and Brent doing their best male Nyala impersonations. But for those of you that don't know, they will do this very slow walking dance, and the loser would literally be the one that turns away first. He is the loser. He's the one that obviously has not lived up to the expectations of the dance, and he then loses. It's very rare that they actually come to blows. So it's a fantastic way of settling your differences and working out who's going to be taking on the females, as opposed to the very dangerous way of fighting like you have with the male impala, and they very often get eaten by predators while they're busy fighting with each other. Whereas the Nyala, fantastic way of just doing it through a dance. Now the other day I was in the area on a different reserve, and a pack of wild dogs had actually cornered a bull and Nyala in a waterhole. Now there was about 12 wild dogs. They'd cornered him into the waterhole, so he had run into the water, and he was obviously quite taller than them, so he was able to stand in deeper water, and now they were around the water, and we sat in this fascinating encounter and obviously locked in a battle of life and death between these dogs and this Nyala, and they were running around the water but trying to push him that he would try to attack them. Literally rip him to pieces, as wild dogs do. But he was a wily old bull, and it seemed had been in that situation before. And what he did was he kept on swimming to the other side of the dam, which made the wild dogs have to run to the other side and then keep running backwards and forwards. Eventually they split up, as wild dogs do. They are very clever in that way, but each time they pressed him on one side, he would swim to the other side, they would press him again. Eventually the Nyala was swimming around in circles, and I thought he was going to drown at some stage, but he eventually found an area in the dam where he could actually just stand, and his head was above water, And this carried on for about an hour and a half, the total length of it, and eventually the wild dogs couldn't get to him, and it started to get hot, and the Nyala was nice and cool in the water, so he had an advantage, and eventually the wild dogs had to leave him and go and seek shelter and in the shade. So he won that little battle, and he lived to fight another day. But I do definitely feel that he had been in that situation before, and he was a wily old bull, and he made it through because of his experience in such situations, because the wild dogs very difficult to evade once they start to hunt. So that was very interesting from that Nyala. Okay, so I'm going to continue along the road a little bit, and looking for these precious cats that we've been after, but Noel has got a lovely flower to show you in the meantime.
I do. I have a beautiful little flower. It's deadly nightshade, Solanum pendiformes, if I'm remembering my Latin correctly. Now, this is not a species that is indigenous to Africa. It is actually an import by accident from Europe. Came over in horse and cattle feed. Well, the story that I have for South Africa is it came over in horse and cattle feed during the Second Anglo-Boer War, when the British were busy feeding their horse and cattle with feed from the colonies that they had across the world. Now, if a species that eats leaves, or a browser or a mixed feeder, were to eat this and then drink water, it's going to cause a form of gastrointestinitis. Basically, their stomachs would enlarge and possibly explode. I've never seen anything trying to eat it, except for cattle on the side of the road. But that being said, so I say that now. When I was up in Zambia recently, there was some of this up, and I watched an elephant eat it. Now, an elephant's not a ruminant. It is a hindgut fermenter, but it's the first time I've ever seen an elephant eat it, and they didn't get sick as far as I could see. So it just poses the question of whether it has to do with the fact of having a ruminant stomach, so 4 chambers to the stomach, that makes the issue, or if it's possibly that the elephant just has a heartier stomach, or possibly that the elephant, because it only digests about 25% of what it eats, isn't actually getting the full effect, whereas a ruminant that rechews and rechews and rechews will get more of the effect from it. So just to give you an indication of size, here's my thumb next to the flower itself. So it's about 2 of my thumbs, so about 1.5 inches, roughly. And even though it is an alien invasive, it's not something that is very easily removed, so it's not like we go out and about to try and get it gone, as it were. Another interesting side note to that is when I was working up in Kenya, when I got a flower book, finally, it took me forever to find a flower book for Kenya, but I found a flower book. They had this listed as an endemic flower. But as far as I know, it's not endemic. It's just been around for as long as that area has been colonized. But being colonized for several hundred years, possibly now, would it be then not an alien invasive? Would it now be just a transplant? Just as a thought. There's your thought for the day. All right, we've got a little bit of cloud cover still. It's starting to get a bit warm. We've had lots of swifts and swallows flying around, busy getting into all of the insect activity, especially like the winged alites, those flying termites that we were talking about. Sorry, I keep saying like this morning. I don't know what's going on with me. My English is atrocious. So as we carry on, looking for little bits and bobs to show you, or perhaps big bits and bobs, depending on what decides to come out and play with us. Ooh, here's another great flower. Oh, fantastic. Oh, I also love this one. This is a Bengal wandering Jew. An absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous flower. Okay. So, as far as I can remember, if I'm remembering correctly, this has what's known as a zygomorphic structure. So, it can fold vertically and be symmetrical, but it cannot fold horizontally and be symmetrical, if I'm remembering correctly, but I have to triple check on that one for you. It's interesting, flowers only come out for a couple of weeks every year, and so you learn so much about flowers, and then they're gone, and then I find that I have to relearn quite a bit. Now, the story I know about this flower is that there were 3 brothers, and the 2 brothers, when they grew up, became ecologists and studied a lot of biology and discovered this flower, but the 3rd brother didn't make it to adulthood. And so they say that the 2 large petals of this flower are for the 2 brothers that survived, and the tiny little petal just under here is for the brother that didn't. And then size-wise, about the size of my thumb. All right.
Were they Jewish?
I actually don't know, so now I've been asking that question, James, and no one's ever been able to give me the answer. Do you have the answer?
I have absolutely
yeah,
no idea.
And I have no idea why it's called Bengal Wandering Jew. It's Commelinum bengalensis, so I'm assuming their surname was Bengal. But other than that, I don't know. It's an interesting thought. All right, let's head on to, are we going up to the Mara? I think we are going up to the Mara. Let's head up to the Mara and see what either Brent or Jamie has to show us.
I don't know that Brent has much to show you, to be honest, at this point. Perhaps his cup of tea that he has returned to camp to fetch. I don't think he's got much to show you. I, on the other hand, have got nothing else to show you either. I was really going to lead with something like I've got a lion or a cheetah, but I don't. There is one difficulty with our journey to this cheetah, which I don't regret. I still think it's worth taking the chance. We can always go live after the sunrise safari is finished, but it's only going to be me out here, and to get from one side there to the other side where the cheetah was, I have to go through a no signal dip, which is one of these things that obviously we always try and plan around, and we get to know the area quite well. We know where we can go and we can't go, but if it's just me, what we do is we work in conjunction with the other team members and with FC. So when we can give them a warning that the signal's going to disappear, they know to cut to another feed, and vice versa, whatever it happens to be. But when I'm all by my lonesome, I'll just have to go very, very quickly through the dip. That will have to be the solution. Buffalo have been through here. Enough rain now. I mean, no, I shouldn't say that. It's never enough rain. Rain is always good. Can it just rain when I'm not out? At least we're not trying to bird today. Whoa! If we get stuck today, I will never ever hear the end of it. And if you think I'm close to sabotaging, you should see our mechanic. Fern, I think. Fern, the rainy season, there's 2 here. The rainy season, there's the small rains, and that happens now in November till around about December, so about a month. Let's say 2, to be on the safe side, on either side of November. And then there is the rainy season from around about April until around about July. Yeah, go away, rain. That's the typical rainy season. There's going to be a very, very dry season soon. Apparently January is particularly bad, and often it's not uncommon for the staff members to be down to regimented showers of 2 minutes every 3 days. Good thing we're in open vehicles, huh? But we'll see how that goes. We'll see how full the dam is. But it does get very, very dry. Fortunately, I think this year's rains are going to be better than last year's rains. Apparently last year's rains were pretty piddly. Oh, here we go. The trick is you just don't stop. You just don't stop. That was how we ended up getting stuck when we were on our way back to camp. There was a motorbike in the middle of the road, and we had to obviously stop, otherwise we would have hit the motorbike. He didn't move. I almost think it was a little bit of badness in his intentions there. As in, I think he wanted us to get stuck, because he could have moved. But we had to stop, and as we stopped, we just slid and we were gone. We were then stuck for the next 6 hours. It's not too bad. The tricky thing here is that your normal understanding from my normal understanding from spending a lot of time in the muddy low veld, when you go onto a crest, you're fine. Crest is fine. Obviously the drainage lines are a little bit more risky, but if you go onto a crest here, you're just as likely to get stuck. Black cotton soil everywhere. Okay, well, I battle the elements, rain and mud and skidding all over the show. Let's send you back across to Ralph in South Africa, who I imagine isn't having quite the same problems.
Okay, folks, while Jamie's stuck in the mud, or talking about stuck in the mud, we've also been attempting not to get stuck in the mud. I had to not go up a road and just a little bit earlier for exactly that reason. Now, we've just spotted these giraffe as we're driving around the corner, and I don't want to go too far forward because I didn't want to scare them. Now, this one's getting a little bit curious of us, or is it that he wants to come and feed on this knobthorn near to us? That's it. He doesn't seem too worried about our presence, and he's using that nice long thick black tongue of his to pull the leaves off. I have chatted about this before, but I like to mention about jasminating. The term jasminating, if anybody knows what that means, I'm going to just, it's actually got not too much to do with the herbs jasmine. It's the tree's communication through the use of tannins. And as this giraffe starts to feed on this tree, it's obviously quite a bit of stress for the tree itself. And what they'll do is they'll start to pump those tannins into the leaves, and in so doing making them quite bitter. But all the trees downwind of this tree pumping the tannins into the leaf will also pick up on those tannins and start to do exactly the same. And this communication between the trees is known as jasminating. That's just something interesting along the lines of the feeding that's busy happening at the moment. So the giraffe, being the largest of the ruminators, and it's fascinating to watch once they stop actually actively feeding and they start ruminating. You can watch those food pellets going up and down the neck in their balls, which is quite interesting. Lovely to watch. That oxpecker has come and landed just off to the left of his feeding site there. I'm sure he's going to move on to the giraffe soon. It's a red-billed oxpecker. Apparently there has been one or two yellow-billed oxpeckers spotted. Bolton, what is the average weight of a giraffe? We're talking in the region of, now I just need to do my my conversions, because we work in kilograms. So excuse me, the survival rate, not the weight. The survival rate of giraffe from young giraffe, that is when they obviously, like most mammals, that is when they're the most susceptible to predation and to injury, etc. Because they're the most weak, the easier target for predators. So in the first year is when they're the most susceptible. But I would say the survival rate is probably between 60 and 70%. Because the young, they do generally do quite well. They're normally separated from the herd by the mother, and she does quite a good job of looking after that youngster. The only problem, the real problem comes in is those youngsters, they don't really understand the danger, and they are quite curious. So they, you know, I've even seen them walking up to vehicles, walking towards predators. They don't understand that. It's mommy that needs to come and bring it back to its senses and bring it back away from the danger. So, but the survival rate is quite good of giraffe. If you leave them be, even in areas where they do have predators, they do increase year on year going through. So okay, this giraffe getting quite curious, coming towards us and bumping up all sorts of beetles with the birds flying out next to it. And I think Noel has some beetles to show you as well.
We do. We have dung beetles. And as we were talking about the other day, for some odd reason, we all just absolutely love dung beetles. Now, these beetles have actually been fighting with each other quite a bit, and attempting to steal either parts of each other's body. Oh, there we go. There we go. Well, that was just too much close contact. The one that's building this very large ball at the moment had someone who was definitely trying to take it away from him, but that other one gave up. He was flicked off quite violently and flew away, possibly to go and steal from someone else. This one, James decided needed to go back to school. Has done a horrible job building his dung ball. But it's, I mean, you can see, look at them, they're gathering. This is very moist elephant dung after the rain, and so it's easier for them to gather all the little bits of it to smush into the ball that they need. Now, the one that James is focusing on at the moment, you can actually see with his forelimbs just how deft he is at compacting that ball into the shape that it needs. There we go. Hard workers and quite strong as well. This one's really going at it now. This one thus far is my favorite one, this one that's building this very large ball over here. He's possibly the most industrious. It's a little bit larger than the others. There we go. Now, they're not the only insect that's here. There is what looks to me to be a type of wasp, but I'm not 100% sure. It could just be a type of fly. And there's also some ants that are busy utilizing this moist elephant dung. And if you look very carefully over here, this part of there we go. This part of the dung pile is actually moving, and that is from dung beetles who are getting the dung from underneath as opposed to on top. So we've discussed it before, but for those who might just be tuning in for the first time, with the behavioral types of dung beetles that you get ones that go underneath the dung pile, fully all the way down, called paracoprids, ones that go inside of a dung pile called endocoprids. You get the telecoprids, like these ones, who build their ball and then roll it away, and then a kleptocoprid will fly in and fight with one of these telecoprids and try and steal it. There we go. There's a tiny little one that's popped out. Let's see if we can get him onto the side here. He may or may not come out. It is no good. All right. Pop her on this side.
Questions outside, but this is awesome.
He's being shy and hiding away. This guy's decided that his ball is perfect and has now started to meander fast away from everybody else so that no one else can steal his ball. Only he knows where he's going. Shame, buddy, I think that's maybe the wrong path. Look how hard he can push. Sammy Jane, you're curious, do dung beetles fly? Sammy Jane, they do indeed fly. They sound like little helicopters as they fly past. Their landings are not always the best. They usually land on their backs and have to wiggle around to get back onto their feet. Absolutely incredible. So now, the other day we filmed from the vehicle, but now being on foot, James is basically sitting on the ground. The camera's almost on the ground. It's right here next to the dung beetles, so you're really not that far from them at all. And I can just imagine how amazing it must look on the camera. So Jamie has some cheetahs, so let's quickly head up to her and let her show them to you.
I'm sorry, I don't have any cheetah at all. I'm sorry, I'm still searching for them. I could have some cheetahs soon, maybe, if we get lucky. Oh, I'm so sorry. I think a little bit of miscommunication. Oh dear. Anyway, no cheetah, but there's still 15 minutes to go. She was seen over there, that exact same ridge where we saw her the first time. So there's still hope, everyone. And this is where I saw that leopard as well, the female leopard that Manu and I spent the day with. So somewhere we have to get lucky. We just do. Now, as I go into the salt lick, I'm not familiar with this vehicle's signal there. So hopefully it stays stable. If it doesn't, it's a very short dip and then we're back up the other side again. I won't be able to hear Rebecca though. Rachel, no I don't. I haven't the faintest clue where the 5 cheetah boys have gone. They disappeared about 2 days ago and nobody's seen them since. Well, that I know of. It's entirely possible they were found yesterday afternoon or this morning. I would guess and say they're between Hammerkop and Balloon Crossing, because that's where they've been the whole time, but I really don't know. I'm not 100% sure on that one. The last time we had them, they were at Balloon Crossing, on the other side of the river. It's pretty far from where we are. Okay. Come on, Signal. You can do it. You can do it. Radio seems to be okay. Cool. Drive. Ostrich, driving past elephant. But it's worth it. It's so worth it. If we find her. Oh, signal's disappearing. So while we go through the dip, we won't be long. We'll send you across to Noel.
I'm live. I'm live. His way. Ahead, Herbie. Just there's so many different dung beetles that are out now, buzzing past my ears. Hello, James. Hello, everybody. All right. So I've just been noticing as well, I've been thinking about elephants a lot this morning since we heard and then we haven't been able to find, but we're finding a lot of evidence of elephants. So for instance, this apple leaf here has been almost completely decimated by elephants and is just starting to grow out the bottom. This little pit that I'm standing next to is where they would have been digging a little bit to get to some root systems, using their forelimbs and their hind limbs as well to sort of dig up the soil like this. And when the soil is very, very moist, especially after the rain we've been having, it's easier for them to dig up roots and tubers. And then I was checking out this termite mound that was just over here, and you can actually see the discoloration from the rain, but I wanted to go and have a closer look and see if we could possibly find any termite activity from some new growth as they're busy clearing out their passageways from debris that would have fallen in during the rain. Now this is quite a small termite mound. Usually when we talk about termite mounds, we talk about very large termite mounds. This one is shorter than I am, at least the portions we can see. And I am not actually seeing any new development thus far on the outside of this termite mound. There are a few wings from the winged alites. They possibly were popping out earlier. Most likely from inside of here, I can just see that there's a little crevice leading into a hole, and just some of the wings have attached themselves. Now there are also ants that are busy around this mound. That doesn't make it an ant mound. It is still a termite mound, but with ants being mostly diurnal, moving at daytime, and termites moving inside their mound during the day. But when we usually see them, it is either night or overcast or very, very cool. Excepting those alites. Those alites are a little bit of a different story. All right. Now, James, do you know the species of ant that's here? These little ones? Yeah. So I've been amazed since I started here just how much we talk about ants and how much people know about ants. And then Tristan and Steph were telling me there's actually an ant book that I can't wait to get my hands on. I've never spent that much time with ants. It's very interesting. We saw an ant earlier, a trap jaw ant James was telling me about that has the fastest closing jaw of any species. Is that correct, James? It's just absolutely incredible. And they're tiny, teeny, teeny, tiny. Size of my pinky nail. All right. So as it warms up like this, you would expect to start to see a bit more of the plains game, like wildebeest or impala coming through, possibly some more elephant action, meandering towards the dams, towards the water systems. But with rain like this, everything's also going to have spread out a little bit more. So, and the animals know this. So during the dry season, water is only in certain areas, and they will collect around those small areas. During the wet season, there's water everywhere, and so they will expand and spread out. Sean, I believe your question is about termites about ants with a wing stage for mating. Very interesting question, Sean. I don't actually know. I actually don't know the answer to that. I would assume, because termites and ants are a very similar species, that you might see something similar with maybe a particular species of ants, but I can't actually answer your question. I don't know if there's someone out there who maybe can answer Sean's question better than I can. Again, a small mound, not much growth coming to the outside. Possibly later this afternoon we'll see a little bit more activity. And we've got a rather interesting bone. To me, it looks like warthog. Here's where the tush would have come out. and then smelling where the nose would be, and then it's just missing half the skull there. You can actually see the teeth nicely and how ground down they are. So chewing on the grass and the rhizomes, the roots of the grass, and wearing down. Now, by the wear and tear of these teeth, I would say, and the size of the tush cavities here, I would say this was probably quite an old male warthog. I can't tell that they're male from here, but I can tell that it was most likely very old just by how worn down they are. Now, it would be interesting to know what possibly caused this crime scene, as Herbie likes to call it. I would guess with a warthog of this size, it could have been lion, possibly could have been leopard. Oh, we can actually see some termites, James. Fabulous. So I picked up this wonderful skull to show you, and then underneath were termites. Now, part of the soil that they had was concentrated around the bottom of this skull, and then now that I'm looking inside, I can actually see a little bit more. So possibly they were extending their home, and this happened to be a nice cavity-filled, moist place for them to inhabit. But you can just see them there with their little clear bodies and red heads. But now, as I've talked about, they're not the biggest fans of sunlight. They do prefer for it to be a little bit darker. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to very gently put our skull back down so that they can carry on making their home. Yes, we've gotten 3 or 4 different species of ants this morning. Finally seen some termites, which is lovely, lovely, lovely. We got the winged alites this morning being devoured by those drop-tailed ants, which I absolutely loved. That was probably my favorite thing that I have seen in quite a while on a macro level. All right, well, Ralph is bumbling around on the other side of Djuma, and he has an update for us, so let's head on over to him.
Right, folks, I know there's been a lot said about marulas, and we do talk about it a lot. But up in front here is the one that I've particularly mentioned numerous times as well, with regards to the false marula. Now, this tree, you can see I don't have a marula right next. In fact, we do. It's right next to us. But we'll pan to that in a second. What I want to show you is, if you have a look at that bark, you can see that extended long sections of bark, as opposed to the sort of ice cream scoop type bark of the marula. So this being the false marula, the fruit of this tree, it actually ripens on the tree as opposed to the marula, which drops on the ground and ripens on the ground, going from green turning to yellow. That is the marula. The false marula, the fruit is slightly smaller. Unfortunately, there's none on it at the moment. It is flowering at the moment, but this one is the false marula. The fruit turns purple, and so that is the major difference between these two trees. And sorry, I just heard something from the control that I just want to double check on as I continue there. Right, that's something very important that I've just heard from control. It's going to be Arbor Week next week, so we're going to be concentrating on trees, and maybe I can just start off with the difference between these two and how important they are in terms of our greater ecology in the area. So these two trees, Sebastian is now going over to the marula. If you can see there, those more like ice cream scoops coming out there. So that's quite an easy way of identifying between the different types of bark. Now, the leaves are very similar too, but the little pinnules on the leaflets of the marula are a lot longer than that on the false marula. But at the moment, it's quite difficult for me to show you that because of the distance, and the leaves are actually just starting out. Now I just want to get a little bit closer here, and then I'm going to jump out the vehicle, and I just want to show you, because I did show the folks on the bushwalk the other day. Now I'm just going to back up a little bit, because I don't want you to be worried about this pole, which we'll be getting rid of by this afternoon because the rain has gone away. Okay, I'm jumping out the vehicle here quickly. I just want to show you, it was the same with the marula that I did a show on the bushwalk. Now I've been getting a lot of tick bites when I've been walking around in the Sabi sands here, but this tree, the marula, has got a very high antihistamine on the inner bark, in the inner cambium, and it's very pink, but the false marula, this is way better than that of the marula. Now I'm not hurting this tree too badly. I just make a small little hole here, and I just want to indicate to you what I'm talking about. It's a very juicy little bit of the bark that we just dig out. Okay, there it comes. Alright, it starts to be very pink, very red. Okay, and I'm sure that Sebastian can get nice and close in on there. Okay, this stuff is extremely high antihistamine. I've been full of tick bites, as I'm sure you could maybe see there, and if I rub it on there, the itch is almost instantly gone. It is fantastic, and you can actually use it for scorpion bites. You can use it for so scorpion stings, should I say. You can use it for wasp stings, you can use it for bee stings, you can use it for anything, any of that kind of venomous little insects that really make you get itchy. You can use it for mosquitoes. What else? I'm sure you could use it for the stinging nettles that you might get over in Europe. And so it is a fascinatingly useful tree that we not only use the fruit, that inner cambium being that antihistamine, very strong in the false marula, but very similar in the marula as well. Even though they're not related, these trees look very similar. They have similar kind of properties, and they have similar kinds of fruit. However, the false marula fruit ripening on the tree purple, with the marula being the yellow, but dropping off onto the floor, and then ripening on the ground. All the animals would also be utilizing both of these trees, especially the mammals eating the marula is very much used by mammals because the fruit ripening on the ground, and then the I'm going to be talking about lots more trees as we go into Arbor Week. I'd like to say thank you to everybody for joining us. Have a nice day, and see you later on the next drive. Thank you very much, folks, and